The density may be higher than in Sichuan, but there are still only around 60 to 100 pandas living in an area of around 300 square kilometres. And searching for these elusive wild pandas to study requires long treks, sometimes for several days, and climbing thousands of feet. As at Wulong, it's the spring mating season, and the chances of seeing pandas in the wild are increased because the pandas come down to the lower slopes to mate. Until a female is successfully mated, a number of males will congregate wherever she leaves her scent marks. The task of finding and filming giant pandas is still far from simple. But after a long and exhausting climb, the sound of loud bleating and chirping raises hopes of a chance to get close enough to study them. Not too close. Like any wild bear, they're very dangerous, especially at a time like this. This is a very rare sighting of one of Feifei's distant wild cousins. From the growls, it's obvious the males will have no energy left for fighting, as Lulu does with the females in Wulong. Since the last national survey of panda numbers in 2001, which calculated that there were around 1,600 wild pandas, scientists here have completed another survey of a number of reserves and subsequently come up with a very surprising result.
所以我们估计啊，可能目前全国野生大熊猫总数量啊，可能有2000到3000只。
The wild panda population might have already reached the magical figure of 3,000. But Dr. Zhang Zejun still doesn't consider this to be a sustainable population and believes that the giant panda remains an endangered species. And even if the future looks a little brighter for pandas, another ominous threat to the survival of the species is emerging. High in the Qinling Mountains, research scientist He Jiangbo has been observing the pandas' food as closely as the pandas themselves. Here, they eat around 20 kilos of bamboo every day, mainly Bashana bamboo. And he's discovered something very worrying.
这就是巴萨墨竹所开的花，巴萨墨竹 开花以后它会死亡，死亡以后这熊猫就会因为食物胆怯而死亡。在上世纪80年代，四川呢就发生了大面积的竹林开花。在秦岭，现在在秦岭地区也面临着这个问题。
Ancient folklore says that when bamboo flowers, death and destruction follow, and modern science agrees. The bamboo will die within 3 to 5 years after flowering. Then the seeds will drop into the soil, but will take another 7 to 10 years to germinate and become edible once more. If panda numbers really have risen to 3,000, they're now at risk of plummeting again.
目前呢，就是我们的研究小组啊，就说是我们想通过就是改变这个竹林的结构，是否能达到它延缓竹子的开花的这样的一个结果。大家知道，竹子开花是一个不可避免的过程，一般就说是它是60到100年，它是一个周期，一个生命周期。这个时间啊，现在没有一个统一的定论。
While they struggle to avoid the same fate that befell the pandas in Wulong, ultimately, scientists here are absolutely clear about what needs to be done to protect giant pandas, whether there are 1,600 or as many as 3,000.
我认为应该是2个方面，一个方面呢是保护好现有的野生大熊的种群，包括保护好它的栖息地，尽量减少对它栖息地里边各种外的因素的干扰。另外一个方面呢，那就是必须加快圈养大熊猫的饲养繁殖，加强有关野生大熊猫放归方面的科学研究以及其他方面的准备工作，争取在最短的时间内尽快将圈养大熊猫成功的放归到野外去。
Back at Wulong, they're getting on with the first part of that task, making more pandas. It's now April, the peak of the breeding season, and as more and more females come into estrus, the keepers are under increasing pressure. Whether they'll reach this year's target depends a great deal on Wu Gung, who seems to have no sense of urgency. Despite his hopeless history, the keepers are encouraged by Wu Gung's burst of energy during his earlier encounter with Shishi. They've decided to reintroduce him to Ying Ying. Wu Gung, however, seems to have reverted to his old ways, suffering from an apparent lack of coordination. Things seem to be going in ever-decreasing circles. As Wu Gung looks around as if he's desperate for encouragement or support, disappointed keepers decide to cut the meeting short and tempt him away. Wu Gung obviously interprets the apple as sustenance and hangs on, while Ying Ying is clearly unimpressed with the entire performance. After yet another disappointment, the last chance is the other male in the group, Ling Ling. But Ling Ling isn't being very cooperative. The reason for Ling Ling's obstinate behaviour is in the voluptuous shape of a new female in the pens, She May, which means happy and lucky girl. She May's scent drives Ling Ling crazy. And her appeal isn't limited to him. She May appears to be a source of passion and delight to all the boy bears, most of all, Lulu. She successfully mated with both Ling Ling and Lulu in 2006 and subsequently gave birth to twins. But last year, She May mysteriously came into estrus 6 months late, which was a source of concern for the keepers and Lulu alike, and resulted in the latter banging against the side of his pen for weeks on end. She May has now returned to a normal cycle, and it's having a big impact on all her neighbours. There's something about this panda that drives wild pandas even wilder. Surely even Wu Gong will find her charms impossible to ignore. Alas, not. With Lulu gazing longingly at the love of his life, things between She May and Wu Gong follow a familiar path. At one point, the roles are even reversed. Finally, the moment arrives for lovesick Lulu to show Wu Gong how it's done. But instead of leaping on She May in his usual domineering way, Lulu romps about with her, and they play like small cubs. Both behave like mating is just a big game. It's hard to believe that Lulu is the same panda that was so aggressive with the other females. She may, or may not, be the love of his life. Their coupling looks likely to succeed without any of the drama and violence that marred other matings. But whether their relationship will result in cubs capable of being released into the wild, it's impossible to know. Wulong will probably reach the target of 15 pandas this year, in spite of Ling Ling and Wu Gong's slow start. These are some of their offspring from last year. The cubs' early ancestors lived around 2 million years ago. Their decline is due to us. Whether these pandas will become part of a sustainable population and survive for even a fraction of that time isn't the responsibility of Lulu, Ling Ling, or even Wu Gong. It's also down to us.